Honorable Okudzeto.
Most grateful, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, I tried to catch your attention during the votes and proceedings. I noticed that throughout, from pages 10 all the way to page 21, anytime the Honourable Minister for Trade and Industry's name appears, we get it wrong. Mr. Alan Chairmantin, his Chairmantin is without an N and a J. It's Chairmantin. There is no N after M-A, and there is no J after the N. So if we can correct it on page 10, page 11, page 13, and page 21. The attendance to the Joint Committee on Trade, Industry and Tourism and Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Julian.
I'm most grateful, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, a small correction on column 2624. Mr. Speaker, I intend to ask questions and not to make comments. Make is omitted. So kindly submit it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Okudzeto, Ablakwa.
Most grateful, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, I wish to thank the Honourable Majority Leader for the presentation of the business statement. On page 2, under presentation of papers, just for clarification, item numbered 3D, D on page 2, budget performance report in respect of government machinery for the period January to December 2017. I want to find out if it's the Office of Government Machinery or it is another entity, government machinery. That's for clarification. Is it Office of Government Machinery or government machinery? I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, I think it's important. Yes, Honourable, you wanted to comment? You want your army to be in front of you. Minority Chief Whip. So you want to come after him?
Yeah. So I think it's important if you could get a bite, then it comes to me.
Okay, that's all right. Please, Honourable.
Most grateful, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will take a cue and be very brief, just to congratulate the maker of the statement, Dr. Okoboy, who has been a very, very helpful member of this House in terms of reminding us always about the need to be conscious about our health, to be conscious about our lifestyle, so that we will be in good health and be able to serve our constituents and serve the people of this country very well. So I commend the maker of the statement, and I commend all our doctors who are putting their professional services available to members of parliament free of charge, so that they will screen us and we will know our BP levels. I believe that as time goes on, they will also rope in other staff of parliament, and we will all be the better for it. Mr. Speaker, the statistics, as has been revealed in this statement, are very, very startling. That 30% of all Ghanaian adults have been determined to be hypertensive. And so in this House of 275 MPs, 92 of us, it is statistically possible that 92 of us are hypertensive. The other statistics, very frightening indeed, that 70% of all deaths recorded at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital are as a result of hypertension. This is really scary. And, Mr. Speaker, we need to highlight this silent epidemic, which is killing many people without knowing. I recall a few weeks ago in the constituency, I received a very frantic call from staff of our local radio station, Klenam FM. Apparently, the morning show host, a young man, 31 years of age, had been hosting the morning show. He's called Mr. Zanu. And he just collapsed whilst on air. He had arrived very actively. He was doing well. They were having a very good show that morning. Fortunately, I was in the constituency and I managed to have him stabilized at the Bator Hospital, and then we rushed him to the 37 Hospital where he received treatment and is now undergoing some physio because he suffered a mild stroke in the process. Clearly, this is a silent killer that many young people are being affected. The aged
Honorable
are also being affected.
Ablakwa, your colleague is on his feet. Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I seek some clarification from my colleague. He said he managed to stabilize the radio presenter at the Bator Hospital. If you could clarify that further. You managed to stabilize him. Mr. Speaker, I want some clarity on that.
You want to know how he managed to do it?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Yes, Honorable. He wants more information.
By transporting the patient to the Bator Hospital. That was my contribution to his stabilization. But thank you very much for the opportunity to clarify. Mr. Speaker, the maker of the statement talks about the need for us to eat well. We have received assurance from the Right Honourable Speaker that the concern we have about the gym has been addressed. But there's another concern about a canteen or a functioning restaurant, which we have talked about for many, many months. We come here and apart from the cafeteria where you can have some tea before, but if you are working at lunchtime, you are here till evening, unless you seek some external support, there is really no functioning restaurant or a canteen that we can have a decent lunch. And I want to use this opportunity to appeal to leadership that just as we are resolving the matter to do with the gym, if we can also address the issue of a canteen or a restaurant for members, because eating well will mean that you have a decent place where you can order good meals instead of all of this improvisation that honorable members are compelled to do. Mr. Speaker, there's also the issue of our architecture and how we really set up our offices. In other parts, you visit their parliament, they have daycare centers for children. So that as a member of parliament, if you have a young one, a baby, after maternity leave, others even have paternity leave, there's a daycare center, it reduces the stress. The children close after school, they can come and have a game center built as part of the office. It reduces the stress after you all go home with the children. All of these things do help to reduce the stress. There are walkways, you can go on a walk, bike paths, you can go on a bike ride, and all of that. All part of the architecture of our buildings, whether they are parliamentary buildings, whether they are ministerial buildings, and all of that. So we need to look at that. Finally, Mr. Speaker, there is also the need to emphasize sporting clubs, exercise clubs. As members of parliament, we should have these clubs active so that every weekend we can join them. Those who like football, who like badminton, and all of those things, other sporting activities, so that we reduce the stress. But certainly, this is a very, very important statement, and we all will be making ourselves available so that our doctors will see how healthy we are. And I do hope that beyond the benevolence of our doctors, we will all do regular checkups, at least every 6 months, so that we will be in good situation, be in a very right frame of mind and right spirit and body, so that we can work and deliver on the mandate that the good people of this country have given us. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this statement to mark World Hypertension Day. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the statement made by the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, ably delivered by Honorable Fuseni, a member of our committee. I had also submitted a statement, but I take your direction that we should, your directive that we should contribute to the statement. In contributing to the statement, Mr. Speaker, I believe it is in order to celebrate the Africa Union 55 years this year. It's certainly a watershed moment. The Union has survived. Many at the inception of the Organization of Africa Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, on the 25th of May 1963, thought that the OAU would not survive. Fortunately, the African people have remained resolute to the idea of continental African unity, and we can say that the dream of African unity, the United States of Africa, is alive and will come to fruition in our lifetime. I believe that that is possible. The OAU went through reforms. In 2002, the Africa Union was born, and we now have a union which many analysts agree is more progressive and more forward-looking. This year's Africa Day is under the theme Africa Union Agenda 2063. And the indication that the Africa Union is sending to the rest of the world is that Africa is ready to plan for the future. Africa is ready to take the future into its own hands. We are ready to take our future into our own hands, and that we are not going to depend on the benevolence of other continents. As it is said, the future belongs to those who plan for it. And so our leaders ought to be commended that we are planning for the future, 50 years ahead, when Agenda 2063 was discussed. It is on this note that we need to encourage member nations to also have long-term plans. We have heard some politicians say that they do not believe in long-term planning. You cannot be a member of the Africa Union that has an Agenda 2063 and you will be saying that you don't believe in long-term planning. We have to plan long-term. We have catching up to do. If others are running, we have to be flying. We cannot afford to continue marking time, especially if you look at the statistics. By 2020, we are told that 15 million young Africans will migrate to Europe. 15 million in search of greener pastures. And this migration is not formal migration, it's not safe migration. They will be attempting to cross the Mediterranean Sea. They will be attempting to use the Sahara Desert. Very dangerous routes to get to Europe. And it is all because the young people of this continent are in search of opportunity. We must create that opportunity in our continent so that this narrative will change. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, whilst commending the African Union for Agenda 2063, we must also commend our heads of states for coming up with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Many analysts have said that for now, this is the biggest and the boldest agenda that the African Union has set out to achieve. This House, fortunately, has ratified the agreement, and as I monitored, on the 10th of May, Ghana and Kenya became the first two countries to submit their instruments of ratification to the African Union in Addis Ababa. It is important to encourage other African countries to follow the Ghana-Kenya example. When we achieve the objectives of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, what it will do is that we will improve intra-Africa trade. It's currently hovering around 12% compared to other continents which are far above 58%. We cannot continue at this rate. We need to trade amongst ourselves. If we trade amongst ourselves, it will lead to industrialization. Industrialization will lead to the creation of more jobs for our youth. And that is the way to go. So as we discuss this game changer of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, it is important to renew our appeal to Nigeria and South Africa, the biggest economies in Africa, to join this free trade area. So far, they have not signed to the agreement as other African countries have done, but we know that these two economies control at least half of the GDP of Africa. And this game changer, which is being touted by many experts, economists, and analysts, cannot achieve its full potential if Nigeria and South Africa do not join. So, Mr. Speaker, the future looks bright for the continent, but it is clear that there are present challenges. The youth of our continent are not particularly excited about the opportunities available for them. Unemployment remains a major issue. There are still conflicts. The last time I checked, the 13 conflicts that are very active in the world, Africa has 9. That certainly is worrying. We still have health challenges. Ebola is coming back. The DRC has been plagued. Then there's a question of Western Sahara, which has to be resolved. Climate change, terrorism, and other urgent matters that require our attention. So, Mr. Speaker, there is work to be done, and on the occasion of Africa Day, which falls tomorrow, we can only urge African leaders to work harder to resolve these nagging issues and also work extra hard to achieve the dreams of Agenda 2063. Mr. Speaker, I want to end by listing the vision of Agenda 2063, which, according to the African Union, came from the people, the African people. There are 7 aspirations from the people. 1, a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. 2, an integrated continent politically united based on the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Africa's Renaissance. 3, an Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. 4, a peaceful and secure Africa. 5, Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, values, and ethics. 6, an Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential offered by its people, especially women and youth, and caring for our children. And 7, an Africa a strong, united, resilient, and influential global player and partner. Mr. Speaker, very, very noble objectives. And it is important that we all stay true to these objectives. As I take my seat, Mr. Speaker, I conclude with the words of the Osagifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who said, and I quote, "Africa must unite. We have before us not only an opportunity, but a historic duty. If we are to remain free, if we are to enjoy the full benefits of Africa's rich resources, we must unite to plan for our total defense and the full exploitation of our material and human means in the full interest of all our peoples. To go it alone will limit our horizons, curtail our expectations, and threaten our liberty." Unquote. Long live Africa unity. I am exceedingly grateful, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, honourable member for Ketu or
North Tongu.
North Tongu.
Yeah. K2 North is my brother Fifi Kwete. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, sorry, I rise to support the views expressed by my colleague who just spoke, and that canvassed by the Honourable Majority Leader and the Honourable Deputy Minister of Information, which has also been strongly submitted by the Honourable Member for Suhum. Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter Honorable Opariansa deleted from my from my initial list of those in the camp I belong to. Mr. Speaker, my view is that we should humbly.
Please continue.
Mr. Speaker, I submit that we should go along with Section 1 as it has been provided. A person has a right to information subject to qualification and laws that are necessary in a democratic society. Because, Mr. Speaker, Article 21F of the Constitution states exactly what is in the bill. And we don't have any wiggle room, really. We cannot depart from what the Constitution says. We don't have any option in this matter. But, Mr. Speaker, having heard the concerns of those who say that this is a clawback and that we should have a progressive mindset to be able to, open up the space, my view is that we have an opportunity in taking a second look at the exempt information. As we work on the bill, that mindset can be brought to bear so that we can have a right to information bill which is more progressive, more expansive, which does not seem to close the democratic space. So I don't think that it is Section 1 that will really limit us, but it is how we go about the entire bill, especially with the exempt information when we get there. If we have limited exemptions, narrow exemptions, then we will have a right to information bill which will stand the test of time, which governance experts will comment that we have done a good job. So I don't think that at this point we should be, sensitive or frightened about how Section 1 has been couched. As for that, it's just a reproduction of what is in the Constitution, which really we don't have a choice, because the Constitution is supreme in the hierarchy of laws, as we all know. We don't have a choice in that matter. So, Mr. Speaker, my view is that let's leave it as it is. But when we get to exempt information, we should make sure that all of the ideas that we have now about having a piece of legislation which would not narrow the space, which would not be counterproductive. When we get there, we will limit the exemptions, make sure that we are able to have a right to information bill which will serve the purpose that we want it to serve. So that's my view, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, I've heard enough. I'm going to put the question on the chairman's amendment. I think we can leave to the drafters if we are agreeable to the text. Honourable Member for North.
Very grateful, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can appreciate the rationale for the Honourable Yaboabin Asamoah's proposal. I appreciate where he's coming from. But, Mr. Speaker, I have gone through Act 535 and the Public Records and Archives Administration Act 1997, Act 535. Having read this, my fear, Mr. Speaker, is that this act is almost obsolete, and it will roll back the progress we want to make. For example, Mr. Speaker, if you look at Section 13 of Act 535, Archives and Other Repositories, Access to Public Records, 13.1 states, there shall be stored for preservation in the National Archives under the Department such public records of sufficient historical or other value as justify their continued preservation by the Council. The Director may, on the advice of the Advisory Committee and with the approval of the Council, designate any place other than the National Archives or other archival repository under his control as a place of deposit for specified public records where it is satisfied that A, the place provides suitable facilities for the preservation and safekeeping of public records of permanent value and access for their consultation by the public, and on and on. So, whereas Clause 2 is more omnibus, it's talking about the government shall make available to the public general information on governance without application from a specific person. Act 535 has a lot of fetters, and it is also obsolete. This modern era, storing of information, we are now talking about clouds, IT. We now have a national data center. Act 535 did not envisage all of that. If you go through this act, several sections talking about physical locations, address, and all of that. So I am saying that we are passing a modern law. Now, let us not go and tie ourselves to an act which has become obsolete. Act 535 is well-intentioned. You know, it's good to have public officials properly manage information, all of that. But this act has to be amended and, improved to be brought, to the modern era. It is too obsolete. So I want to plead. I see where Honorable Yaboabin is coming from, but if we tie ourselves to Act 535, a careful reading of Act 535, we will really be going backwards. It's not going to be helpful to us, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Yes, Honourable Member for North Tongu.
very grateful, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this statement which our leadership has made in honor of the late J.H. Mensah. Ordinarily, Mr. Speaker, I am not worthy and even fit to tie the shoestrings of the Colossus, the Patriot, the Venerable J.H. Mensah, who was born in 1928 and will have been 90 years in October this year. So, Speaker, the late J.H. Mensah was indeed a blessed man, larger than life, a life well lived, and everywhere J.H. Mensah worked, he distinguished himself, either at the United Nations or on the Advisory Council of the Africa Development Bank, or as the national head of the National Planning Commission in 1961, where he drew Ghana's 7-year development plan. Up to now, students of economics are told that that was one of the finest economic plans that Ghana ever had. And I'm conversant with that plan because my constituency, North Tongu, is featured prominently. His vision for agriculture, for irrigation, how that Asare-Menyah, Accra Irrigation Plains area will have served as a breadbasket for not only Ghana, but the entire West Africa, as he envisioned. Mr. Speaker, as minority leader, J.H. Mensah always inspired. He always motivated. And as young people growing up, we all looked up to him. He inspired us, and it's really, really sad that some of us could not have the opportunity to be mentored by this great man. I remember one of his profound contributions on the floor of this house, which became a major national news item for discussion. J.H. Mensah admonished politicians to stop our politics of free. At the time, it was the NDC government. President Rawlings was in charge of the country. And he argued that there is no such thing as a free policy, and that if it's free to you, somebody else is paying for it. And indeed, it is our taxes that are used for these interventions. That he was more concerned about how successful we implement national policies and the impact those national policies will make, the sustainability of those policies, and not just the fact that they were free. He was very, very sincere with his politics. He was a nationalist. And what is interesting about J.H. Mensah is that going through his profile, he was so good that even the colonialists, the colonial administration could not ignore him. In 1953, he was appointed an assistant inspector of taxes. That is how good he was. As we all know, the colonialists did not really want Ghanaians or Gold Coasters at the time to be part of their setup, to be part of their governance structure. And yet, Mr. J.H. Mensah could not be ignored. I agree with the majority leader that it is sad that he does not have a memoir, but I believe that the suggestion that the Honorable Majority Chief Whip has made must be taken up seriously so that a special research work can be commissioned to put together a series of productions on the works and times and pronouncements of Mr. J.H. Mensah. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, the question that I intend to pose is that can we as a country say in all confidence that we made the best of Mr. J.H. Mensah? Can we really, in our heart of hearts, come to that conclusion that we made the best of his intellect, we made the best of his experience? That is why in other jurisdictions, they have a chamber, the House of Lords of a sort, where people like that help the country, help presidents, help governments, no matter the political party in power. They transcend beyond political party. That is too below them. It's too petty. Somebody like Mr. J.H. Mensah should be used by every president, every government, whether it's NDC, CPP. The political party should not matter. But unfortunately, people like J.H. Mensah, in my view, have not been utilized well enough, especially in his last years, where he could have contributed immensely to the progress of our country. And as we reflect, this is something we should all consider. There are very few of them in the system before we allow them to depart, and all of that brain work, all of that brain power, all of that experience is allowed to rot in the ground. We should make the best of them, regardless of which political party or which political persuasion is in charge or is in the helm of affairs at any point in time. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to eulogize such a great man who I am not worthy to speak of. I thank you very much.
Very well.
Question star 441. Who stands in the name of the honorable member for North Tongu?
Very grateful, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, I rise to ask the Honourable Minister for Roads and Highways when the Sege to Asare-Menyah Road will be reconstructed.
Honorable Minister.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Asare-Menyah Road is part of the regional route known as R18. The road length is 28 kilometers. The road is in the Adan West district of the Greater Accra region and North Tongu district of the Volta region. The road is the main trunk road connecting Sege on the main Accra-Afrao route to Bato through Asare-Menyah. The road surface is bituminous treated. The surface condition is fair. Mr. Speaker, the current program is that there is no major rehabilitation contract on the road. Routine maintenance works, that is pothole patching, is scheduled for third quarter this year, 2018. The future program for the said road, Mr. Speaker, is that engineering studies has been submitted for approval. The rehabilitation of the Asare-Menyah Road will therefore be part of the 2019 trunk road program, depending on availability of funds. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Okudzeto.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Under the current program, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister indicates that routine maintenance, that's pothole patching, is scheduled for the third quarter of 2018. We are currently in the third quarter. We have done 13 days of the third quarter. So I want to respectfully find out if this original schedule is still still what you are working with, that is within this third quarter, or you may have done some amendments going into the fourth quarter, since we are 13 days in the third quarter and nothing has started as of now.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I indicated, that road, I can confirm, is not in good shape and is also part of the ongoing routine maintenance program. Once it's scheduled for this year, normally we categorize all roads for the sake of proper management and control into various quarters, the 4 quarters within the year, so that it will be properly programmed. But with the advent of rains, we are redoubling our efforts to tackle all roads, particularly where we get the report that the deterioration is fast. So I can assure you that we are taking care of that. We will keep an eye on that road and maintain proper road surface, at least to make it smooth and motorable. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Most grateful, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just to find out from the Honorable Minister which agency will be carrying out the maintenance, the routine maintenance, because the first paragraph says that there is currently no major rehabilitation contract on the road. So I am guessing that perhaps the ministry itself will be carrying out the routine maintenance. So I just want clarity, Mr. Speaker, if you can educate me on the body that will be carrying out the routine maintenance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, since it forms part of the trunk roads in our country, the unit that has jurisdiction over it is the Ghana Highway Authority. So it's in their database, and they will take action on the routine maintenance on that road. Ghana Highway Authority. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Most grateful, Mr. Speaker. My final question is on the future program. The Honorable Minister indicates that it's been packaged under a 2019 trunk road program, depending on the availability of funds. I want to find out from the Honorable Minister how the indication is looking so far as the funding aspect is concerned, the availability of funds. Are you still looking at it within a 2019 framework, or your projections have changed because of the availability of funds factor that you have raised? Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the works to be carried out on that road will be re-sealing and partial rehabilitation. And I again want to indicate that it's part of our program for next year for that exercise to be carried out. And we stick to that program, we stick to that timetable. Nothing has changed. And I want to firmly indicate that it will be carried out because it has already been programmed. I thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, I rise to support the statement ably made by the chairman of the Ghana-Turkey Parliamentary Friendship Association. I wish to commend the maker of the statement for presenting what has been a very well-researched and very warm statement, which highlights the very good relations between Ghana and the People's Republic of Turkey. Right Honourable Speaker, we all do know that Turkey is emerging as a powerhouse. It continues to chart an independent path of strong relations with its bilateral and multilateral partners. Ghana has remained a very, very friendly partner of Turkey. I recall that in 2011,
the first Deputy Speaker will take the chair. Please continue.
I recall that in the year 2011, the former president of Turkey visited Ghana to highlight the good relations that exist between both countries. In 2013, 2 years after that, former President Mahama also reciprocated and paid a state visit to Turkey. Last year, we do know that in March, 5 ministers from Turkey, led by the foreign minister of Turkey, visited Ghana. It was a very large delegation, had 50 businessmen in that delegation, and it was really a trade delegation to deepen trade ties with Ghana. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that Ghana-Turkish relations is at an all-time high, and there's a lot that we can benefit from each other: cultural exchange, economic exchange. We need to see how we can all leverage on this relationship. As we congratulate President Erdogan on his recent victory, the international community has urged him to do well to deepen the democratic space and to allow for opposition elements and other persons who may not necessarily agree with his political party's ideology to also have the space. We know that what happened to him when there was the attempted coup was a trying moment in the history of Turkey. But it is to the credit of the Turkish people that they all stood firm and resisted the attempt to torpedo the democratic experiment in that country. But that said, after the coup was aborted, the international community has been concerned that it will appear that very draconian measures are being put in place. A lot of people are being jailed. Media freedoms are not exactly as it should be. So whilst we commend President Erdogan, we also want to add our voice to that of the international community, urging him to give space for democracy to be deepened and entrenched in that country. In October this year, Turkey will mark its 94th year of independence, and we wish them well. We wish President Erdogan a successful tenure, and we encourage our colleagues on the Ghana-Turkey Parliamentary Friendship Association to really deepen the ties, and we look forward to the initiatives that they will be bringing on board And we as a House can assure them of our support in ensuring that this friendship and this partnership grows and is really sent to the next height. I thank the maker of the statement, and may I conclude by saying that long live Ghana-Turkey relations. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa.
Most grateful, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, just to draw the attention of the Deputy Majority Leader at page 4 of the business statement. Item 4, Roman numeral 4, IV, motions. Adoption of the mid-year review of the budget statement and economic policy of the Government of Ghana for the 2017 financial year. It should be 2018 financial year. So I believe that can be corrected. Mr. Speaker, there is an issue with a referral you made after the Honorable Dr. Okoboy made a statement on the no-bed syndrome. I've been following up on the matter, and it does appear that there is some inertia. So we are hanging so far as that referral is concerned. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention, because apparently it looks like the Ghana Health Service said they were doing their own investigations. And so the Ministry of Health, I'm referring to the referral on the no-bed syndrome, which is a matter that is of concern to all of us and the vast majority of Ghanaians. There was a very good statement made by Dr. Okoboy. The Right Honourable Speaker referred the matter to the Health Committee to take up. But there's been no progress. So I just want to bring the matter up so that we can find out exactly what the bottlenecks are and try to make progress, because it looks like the situation is getting out of control and there are reports every now and then, deaths are occurring and all of that. So if Right Honourable Speaker can please lead us to offer some more direction on what should be done as a House. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, I rise to support the statement ably made by the chairman of the Ghana-Turkey Parliamentary Friendship Association. I wish to commend the maker of the statement for presenting what has been a very well-researched and very warm statement, which highlights the very good relations between Ghana and the People's Republic of Turkey. Right Honourable Speaker, we all do know that Turkey is emerging as a powerhouse. It continues to chart an independent path of strong relations with its bilateral and multilateral partners. Ghana has remained a very, very friendly partner of Turkey. I recall that in 2011, the former...
The first Deputy Speaker will take the chair. Please continue.
I recall that in the year 2011, the former president of Turkey visited Ghana to highlight the good relations that exist between both countries. In 2013, 2 years after that, former President Mahama also reciprocated and paid a state visit to Turkey. Last year, we do know that in March, 5 ministers from Turkey, led by the foreign minister of Turkey, visited Ghana. It was a very large delegation, had 50 businessmen in that delegation, and it was really a trade delegation to deepen trade ties with Ghana. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that Ghana-Turkish relations is at an all-time high, and there's a lot that we can benefit from each other: cultural exchange, economic exchange. We need to see how we can all leverage on this relationship. As we congratulate President Erdogan on his recent victory, the international community has urged him to do well to deepen the democratic space and to allow for opposition elements and other persons who may not necessarily agree with his political party's ideology to also have the space. We know that what happened to him when there was the attempted coup was a trying moment in the history of Turkey. But it is to the credit of the Turkish people that they all stood firm and resisted the attempt to torpedo the democratic experiment in that country. But that said, after the coup was aborted, the international community has been concerned that it will appear that very draconian measures are being put in place. A lot of people are being jailed. Media freedoms are not exactly as it should be. So whilst we commend President Erdogan, we also want to add our voice to that of the international community, urging him to give space for democracy to be deepened and entrenched in that country. In October this year, Turkey will mark its 94th year of independence, and we wish them well. We wish President Erdogan a successful tenure, and we encourage our colleagues on the Ghana-Turkey Parliamentary Friendship Association to really deepen the ties, and we look forward to the initiatives that they will be bringing on board. And we as a House can assure them of our support in ensuring that this friendship and this partnership grows and is really sent to the next height. I thank the maker of the statement, and may I conclude by saying that long live Ghana-Turkey relations. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, honourable member for North.
Very grateful, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this motion. Mr. Speaker, I believe that some background at this point will be useful. When the erstwhile NDC government was in power, we had promised in our manifesto, the 2008 manifesto, that in line with Article 38 of the Constitution of Ghana, we will seek to expand the education space and construct a public university in all 10 regions in Ghana, because at the time, we had only 7 public universities in Ghana. So we set out to establish the University of Health and Allied Sciences in Ho, the Volta region, and then we established the 9th university, the University of Energy and Natural Resources in the Brongahafo region. It is important, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member, hold on. Yes, Chairman of the committee.
Mr. Speaker, he just stated that in their manifesto, they had promised to cite universities in all the 10 regions. And at the time, there were 7 public universities. I want to bring it to his attention that there is no public university in the Upper West region. So there couldn't have been 7 public universities at the time. There's no public university in the Upper West region. So
very well,
as at that time, your manifesto contained an untruth, because
your point is very good. Yes, sorry, member, continue. Take that on board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Chairman for the Finance Committee will have to take his time and let Upper West has the University for Development Studies, WA campus. There is a University for Development Studies in the Upper East region. But it is a public university. Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. Yes, do you have a point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member should not mislead the House. There is a campus of UDS in WA. There is no university in WA. And there is... Mr. Speaker, the position is that every region is supposed to have a resident university. We will do it. There is none. Don't misinform people. It's only a campus of UDS. There is no there's no university in Upper East. Don't come and stand.
Honourable members, order. There is University of Development Studies located in Tamale with campuses in places other than northern regions. That's it. Please proceed. Please proceed.
So, Mr. Speaker, Article 38 of our Constitution reads, "The state shall provide educational facilities at all levels and in all the regions of Ghana, and shall to the greatest extent feasible make those facilities available to all citizens," unquote. It is this educational objective that informed the decision to reach out with public universities in all regions in Ghana. And in the case of the Eastern region, which did not have a public university, we set out to establish the University of Environment and Sustainable Development. Mr. Speaker, a careful reading of Section 3 of Act 898, the University of Environment and Sustainable Development, Act 2015, it states, the head note is campuses of the university. The university shall be established in Somanya with campuses in Donkokrom and any other place as the council may determine. Mr. Speaker, this is as clear as daylight. It's as clear as the sun. The two campuses, as you establish the University of Environment and Sustainable Development, the two primary campuses should be Somanya and Donkokrom. And then, when the university has been established and the University Council has been set up, the University Council can then establish satellite campuses in other parts of the Eastern region. That is what the Act is. We are being invited to engage in an illegality. We are being invited to breach Section 3 of Act 898. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we say we are opposed to this facility and the use of this facility. In any case, Mr. Speaker, if the majority is minded, if government, to be more specific, is minded to depart from Donkokrom as they have done and establish this campus in Bunso, in the Akim Ablakwa constituency, a constituency where the president was a member of parliament, in the Achim traditional area, then what the government should have done was to have come to amend Act 898. That is the legal and proper thing to do. You don't you don't flagrantly and so blatantly abuse Act 898 and expect us to come along and support you. Mr. Speaker, we will not join this illegal endeavor. We will not be part of it. And we want the people of Ghana to know that we are not opposed to Bunso in the Achem traditional area having a university. We are not opposed to it. No. Let it be stated clearly. What we are saying is that let's follow the law. In any case, the main campus, the headquarters, we constructed it for 45 million euros. That is $50 million. That is what this House approved in November 2016. Interestingly, at the time, my good friend, Honorable Ejako, said it was too expensive. He described the amount as daylight robbery. It is interesting that today, a satellite campus, a sub-campus, is even more expensive than the main campus, the headquarters. $90 million. $90 million. If what we did was daylight robbery, then what is this one? What is this? $90 million. So, Mr. Speaker, logically, if we can build the headquarters of the university for $50 million in Somanya, this $90 million, I submit strongly that we could have divided it and had the Donkokrom campus and the Bunso campus. Then you are being fair. Then we will be having value for money. And Mr. Speaker, it is important that as lawmakers, we are minded about Article 36, 2D of our Constitution. Article 36, 2 of the Constitution stipulates, the state shall, in particular, take all necessary steps to establish a sound and healthy economy whose underlying principles shall include D, undertaking even and balanced development of all regions and every part of each region of Ghana, and in particular, improving the conditions of life in the rural areas and generally redressing any imbalance in the development between the rural and the urban areas, unquote. This is what Article 36 2D of our Constitution states. We all know.
Honourable Member, going by this arrangement, can't I complain that in the 60s, the government established only one university in the Ashanti region, and I am living at Ablakwa, there is no, but we create a new one, Asare-Menyah, Donkokrom, so all in one region. Is that even? So let's move away from there. We'll talk to the issue.
No, Mr. Speaker, it's an important point to raise. And my response to you will be that is why after KNUSC, we have the University of Education Kumasi campus. We have Mampong campus. That is all in the Ashanti region. That is why we continue. That is objective.
Those were built as technical schools. Technical schools, which you have given me.
Mr. Speaker, this House has to be very, very careful the precedents we are setting. We are saying that we pass a law, Act 898. We come to power, another party comes to power. We don't like our laws. We won't amend it. We don't tell the people of Donkokrom anything. We are violating the law and we are going to a preferred place because of clear familial reasons. Article 17 of our Constitution frowns against discrimination. What we are being invited to do is to discriminate against the good people of Donkokrom in flagrant violation of Article 17 of the Constitution of Ghana. And that is why this House is saying, this side of the House is saying that we will not be part of this illegal and discriminatory action. We will not be part of it. And let the people of Ghana know that we did not align ourselves, we did not support this discriminatory and this illegal action. Mr. Speaker, page 5 of the report.
What is that?
Mr. Speaker, page 5 of the committee's report. We are told, the first paragraph, that following this development from the recommendation of the feasibility study, the Exim Bank of Korea agreed to finance the construction of a campus of the university at Bonso. My question is, Exim Bank of Korea agreed with who? Who did they agree with? Has Ghana lost its sovereignty? Since when? When we are contracting loans, do foreigners dictate to us where we will site our universities or implement our projects? Since when? Have we lost our sovereignty? Are we no longer a sovereign state?
Please refer to the rule you are coming under.
Mr. Speaker, I come under Order 92. Under 92 1A.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, 92 1A says no member shall interrupt any other member except by rising to a point of order. That is where any of these orders is alleged to have been infringed upon.
Yes, so I'm hearing what she has infringed upon. Which rule?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is grossly misleading the House.
Yes.
He stated that the siting of the university at Bunsu is informed by familial reasons. Mr. Speaker, he's impugning wrong motive. That is
What word is that?
This is familial reasons.
Familiar.
Yes.
I'm not conversant with that word. What word did you use?
Yes, I use familiar, and I stand by it. Yes. Familiar.
If you did so, you're out of order, and I direct that you withdraw it, please.
Mr. Speaker, I would follow your directive, and to still insist that what we are being asked to do flies in the face of Article 17 of the Constitution, which frowns against discrimination. We are discriminating against the good people of Donkokrom. This facility, we have been blessed. When we were at the ministry, our plan was that the 45 million euros will service Somanya. When the South Korean facility matures, we will then use that facility, which is a bigger facility, for Donkokrom and Bonso. Yes. That is our plan. Why are you sending all the money, even more than the headquarters, what we are using for the headquarters, to only one place? What crime have the people of Donkokrom committed? What have they done wrong? What have they done wrong? What have they done wrong? Mr. Speaker, this is a very sad day in the history of democracy in our country, and we will not support this, and we will not join this illegality and this discrimination. It is a shame indeed, a very big shame. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah.
Let me hear the Minister for Defense. I'll give you a chance, Minister, later.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think we are back to where we began. Mr. Speaker, exactly 2 years ago, just a little bit, just under 2 years ago, Mr. Speaker, I was sitting exactly where the man is sitting. Mr. Speaker, the leader of our side then, the majority leader, was not there. I was the one who led the debate on this very particular loan, or university, the setting up of university. And Mr. Speaker, I remember I said one single thing. I said, every university that is being set up in modern times, we start from the capital. Why is it that Kofre-Dua is being cut out? I remember I said it. I remember I said it. You see, who is discriminating here? Mr. Speaker, who is discriminating here? Mr. Speaker, unless they want to tell me that I cannot quote myself, or I don't know what I said. Mr. Speaker, I remember I said another thing. I said that Bonsu already has the structures for the agriculture college. Why is it that that one is also left out? I remember I said it.
Honourable members, order. Please continue.
Mr. Speaker, I am amazed about the angle our colleagues on the other side are adopting today. The same tactics they did is the same thing they did. The next day it was on the NDC papers. Nituo is against the people of Asare-Menyah. That's exactly what you are doing today. It's very unfortunate. It is very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker. That is not how to run a country. You do not pitch people against one another when people are making points. Mr. Speaker, but let me go to the main things. I want to re-ask the question that the member for Suhu asked. So it is a crime for one president to say, oh, if another campus can be established, it should be established at Bonso. But it's not a crime for another president to set it up at Asare-Menyah and Tongu. Is that what we are saying? Are we saying that it is not a problem? As for the NDC, Mr. Speaker, as for the NDC, when they set up a campus at Tongu and Asare-Menyah, it is not a crime. But when any other party decides to say, oh, we are setting up, according to the act, another campus at Tongu, at Bonso, is a problem. But Mr. Speaker, there is nothing in this bill or this loan that we are agreeing that says that there is nothing in this loan agreement or this report that says that the government has decided that they will not build a campus at Tongu. There's nothing like this. I don't see it. And in fact, if there was anything, let me state again that if there was anything in this loan agreement that said that the government will not build a campus at Tongu, I would have voted against this. But there's nothing like that.
Honorable Minister, hold on. Yes, what is your point of order?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Defense Minister is totally out of order. He says that every modern university...
Hold on, Honorable Member. Tell me what he has said that is wrong or infactual.
He's misleading this House. He says that every modern university was established in the capital of the regions. It's not true. The University of Education Winneba was established in Winneba. Winneba is not the capital in the central region. The University of Mines and Technology in Takwa was established in Takwa. Takwa is not the capital of the Western region. It's totally out of order.
It's totally out of order. Bonso is not the capital.
And in any case, Mr. Speaker, is Bonso the capital of the Eastern region? Bonso, is it the capital of the Eastern region?
Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Honorable Member, proceed.
Page. Honorable Okudzeto, Ablakwa. Order.
Mr. Speaker, the third paragraph on page 11, the Honorable Second Deputy Speaker directed that the leadership of the Finance Committee be served with copies of the agreement. He did not direct that they should join the Committee on Education. So this is not exactly how the directive was made. The directive is that the leadership of the Finance Committee be served with copies of the agreement so that they can advise the Education Committee. So if it can be captured more accurately, I'll be grateful, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, on that same page, item number CI, the second entry under C, the thief line on goods and services and equipment in under the Ghana Agriculture Sector Investment Program. In should be deleted so that it will read goods and services and equipment under the Ghana Agriculture Sector Investment Program. I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Yes, Honorable Okudzeto, Ablakwa.
Most grateful, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Deputy Majority Leader is right, but just to draw her attention to the fact that page 18 has captured that. Page 18 has made that correction. So we are good to go, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, votes and proceedings. Yes, Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa.
Most grateful, Right Honorable Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, on page 19 under Business Committee, I'm glad the chairman of the Business Committee, the Honorable Majority Leader, is here. It indicates that the committee met on Thursday, 19 July 2018 at 9:05 a.m. and determined business of the House for the 11th week, ending Thursday, 26 July 2018. Just want to find out if that's what happened at the Business Committee or it's an error, because we all know that we will be rising on the 27th. I see that the business statement is even contemplating Saturday, possibly. But this 26 July, I don't know where that is coming from, if it is indeed accurate or something is amiss. So I seek clarification, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa.
Most grateful, Right Honorable Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, a few issues. I'll run through them very quickly. The item number 7 on the possible Saturday meeting, we are only told when we intend to close at midday, but we are not told the commencement time. Will it be the normal 10 a.m. or does the chairman of the Business Committee want us to come a bit earlier at 9 or 8? We need clarity on that so we can prepare for next week. Mr. Speaker, item number 5, the funerals of our illustrious statesmen who have departed. I wish to commend the Business Committee for creating room for us to be able to go pay our respects. But there is a challenge with the Thursday, 26 July 2018. I noticed that you have created room between 2 and 4 p.m. where we proceed to the Honorable J.H. Mensah's house for the 1-week observance. But I've just been reading the official funeral arrangements for His Excellency, the former Vice President, as has been put out this morning, or it must have been last night. And I noticed that that same day, Thursday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. has been designated as a day for filing past, because there will be no filing past on Friday. Friday will be for the funeral service, 9 a.m. to 12. So I'm wondering if we can accommodate that so that probably within the same time, on our way back from Honorable J.H. Mensah's 1-week observance, we could just file past as well, because it will be within time. That's 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then we are creating here for ourselves 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. So if it is possible, we can box the two together so that we are not accused of having probably not paid attention to that, just to avoid the possible oversight. So I just make this proposal for the consideration of the House. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the Young Parliamentarians Forum, I noticed that the Honourable Majority Leader said that there should be some biological certification. I want to plead that that biological certification should not be based on just a face value, assessing people, especially those of us who are bald head. Because I qualify to be part of the forum. And yet, I have not been invited. I do not know about the meetings and all of that. And I only see the lunch. I've been talking to my brother, Honorable Agaga, who is also bald, and it appears that he's also been caught up in the situation. Let this biological certification be based on our date of birth and not how we look or how we appear. We may appear bad, but we may be very young bad men, not in the category of the Right Honourable Speaker, with all respect. So I plead that the organizers should take a second look at the membership and rope all of us in. We all want to participate. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sorry to draw Mr. Speaker in.
Honorable Deputy Minister, you may please take the appropriate chair. Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa. Honorable Member for North Tongu.
Most grateful, Right Honorable Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, I rise to ask the Honorable Minister for Finance when the first quarter of the District Assembly's Common Fund, DACF, for the 2018 fiscal year, which is in arrears and indeed long overdue, shall be released. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Minister. Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In answering the question, Mr. Speaker, please permit me to describe the processes that lead to the payment of District Assembly Common Fund. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Revenue Authority, GRA officers across the country assess and collect revenue due. The revenues are paid by cash, checks, or bank transfers, depending on the location of the collecting point. Revenue collected across the country are reported through the GRA regional offices to the headquarters. Reported collections are reconciled with the commercial banks, Bank of Ghana, Controller Accountant General, and the Ministry of Finance to account for uncleared checks, transit items, and refunds, among others. Mr. Speaker, this process requires an average of 1 month after the end of the collection month or the quarter to complete the reconciliation process. The lead time occasioned by this process is further prolonged by the rigidities in our budgets and consequently cash flow. In situations where revenue inflows are not sufficient to meet all constitutional charges on the consolidated fund, delays are occasioned. In the specific case of the 2018 first quarter payment, the Ministry of Finance processed and released an amount of 336,168,522 cedis, 76 pesos to the Controller and Accountant General's Department for disbursement into the District Assembly's Common Fund. This, accordingly, has been paid to the DACF.
Honorable.
Very grateful, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honorable Deputy Minister for her response. She has just indicated to us that they have effected the release for first quarter. Members of Parliament are yet to see evidence of that. Are you able to indicate to us when it is likely that the assemblies will have this money reflect in our accounts? Because things are really tough at the districts.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can say that the amounts have been released to the various district assemblies, and hopefully by next week we should see these monies in the accounts. I know that members of Parliament are getting somewhere between 61,000, and depending on the nature of the assembly, I know North Tongu is doing 239,000 Ghana cedis for this quarter, and Asare-Menyah is also doing something in the region of 249,000 for this quarter. So hopefully by next week, the money should reflect in the various assemblies and the accounts as well.
Honorable, can you ask your next question?
Most grateful, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask my next question, my next major question, which is to find out from the Honorable Minister for Finance what accounts for the delay in the releases of the District Assembly's Common Fund as stipulated by the 1992 Constitution.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my submission, I stated that in situations where revenue inflows are not sufficient to meet all constitutional charges on the consolidated fund, delays are occasioned. But, Mr. Speaker, we released the letter on the 18th of June, and it took some time for DACF to also process details and then submit to the various assemblies. So, Mr. Speaker, we were on time. The letter was released on the 18th of June to the District Assembly Common Fund Administrator.
Thank you. Considering the time and business ahead of us, I dread business goes beyond the prescribed hours. Honorable Okudzeto, one more question, please.
Most grateful, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have here a copy of the communication we received from the administrator of the Common Fund. It came to us on the 26th of June this year, which informed us of the release of fourth quarter, 6 months down the line. So clearly, this 1 month window you talk about, we go long past that, 6 months. So there is something fundamentally wrong. And Mr. Speaker, if you look at Article 252 of the Constitution, it says that, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, Parliament shall annually make provision for the allocation of not less than 5% of the total revenues of Ghana to the district assemblies for development, and the amount shall be paid into the district assemblies common fund in quarterly installments. Mr. Speaker, so there's
subject to.
Well, there's no subject to in the Constitution. That's why I only read what is in the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. So I want the Honourable Deputy Minister to let us know, because it appears there is something wrong.
Fundamentally wrong.
Why these long delays? Because it was in June that we received a letter for fourth quarter of last year. So what is happening? And can you assure us that moving forward, you will at least bridge the time? Because the delays is really worrying. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on our part, that's Ministry of Finance, we did the release on time. So maybe we will need to liaise with the Ministry of Local Government and the Administrator of Common Fund to expedite action when these release letters come to them. But from the point of view of Ministry of Finance, we did release the letter and then the funds on time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Honorable Sir, we thank you very much for coming to the House and answering our questions. And we thank you very much. You are respectfully discharged. Honorable Okudzeto will make a statement, commemorative statement on the passing away of the former president, President Atta Mills, and the 6th anniversary thereof. Honorable, we agreed on brevity, and that Hansard will capture the entire statement. So please, speak to it in a few words.
I'm most grateful, Right Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity granted to make this commemorative statement. I shall follow the cue given by the Right Honourable Speaker, and I appeal to the table office to capture the entire statement as read. Right Honourable Speaker, today marks exactly 6 years when this nation was drowned in tears and grief at the news of the sudden passing of Professor John Evans Atta Mills that wet and cold Tuesday, the 24th of July, 2012. It is the first and only time in Ghana's history that a sitting president has died in office. Professor Mills was a world-class scholar, as we all know, studied at the London School of Economics and Political Science, where he obtained an LLM in 1968. He earned his PhD in law from the prestigious School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. He was selected as a Fulbright Scholar at the equally prestigious Stanford Law School in the United States of America. At age 27, he was awarded his PhD after successfully defending his doctoral thesis in the area of taxation and economic development. His contribution to the advancement of knowledge is remarkable, having lectured at the Faculty of Law and the Business School, both of the University of Ghana, for more than 2 decades. He is the author of numerous publications, including Taxation of Periodical or Deferred Payments Arising from the Sale of Fixed Capital, 1974, Exemption of Dividends from Income Taxation, A Critical Appraisal, and many, many other publications. Professor Mills excelled beyond the lecture room. He was a member of the Ghana Stock Exchange Council. In 1988, he became acting commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service of Ghana and was named National Tax Commissioner in September 1993. He served on the board of trustees of Mines Trust. He also chaired the casebook preparation on Ghana's income tax and oversaw the review of Ghana's double tax agreement with the United Kingdom. Professor Mills, as we all know, was a distinguished sportsman and sports administrator. He was famously the chairman of the National Sports Council and administrator of the Accra Hearts of Oak Sporting Club. On the political scene, he emerged first as running mate of President Jerry John Rawlings in the 1996 election, which they both won, and was sworn in on the 7th of January 1997. Between 2001 and 2008, Professor Mills became the de facto opposition leader and earned an enviable reputation for decent politicking and gracefully accepting election results without fomenting trouble. He soon became affectionately known as the Asumjehini, to wit, the King of Peace. Mr. Speaker, until his untimely death, the presidential candidate for the National Democratic Congress, he was the presidential candidate for the National Democratic Congress for the 2012 presidential election, setting a new record in challenged presidential primaries, winning by a remarkable 96.7%. Mr. Speaker, as president, Professor Mills had reverence for Parliament. He attended to his constitutional obligations to this august House with deep commitment and great pleasure. It is to his legacy that the Job 600 project, which has now been completed, started. He also mooted the idea of constituency offices, which was piloted before his call to glory. He also made history as the first president to appoint a female Speaker of Parliament, the Right Honourable Bamford Addo. Mr. Speaker, in office, he achieved numerous successes. He spearheaded Ghana's economic growth, the highest in our history of 14.4% in 2011. We recorded the unprecedented 1 million metric tons of cocoa production. Inflation remained at an unprecedented single digit for the longest period in Ghana's history, and he extended national electricity coverage from 54% to 72%, touching the lives of Ghanaians in 1,700 communities. We also know of his achievements in the health sector, in retooling our security agencies, and in ensuring that the fight against corruption was tackled. Right Honourable Speaker, on the international stage, Professor Mills made all Africans proud. The international community couldn't resist his rare personal democratic credentials and his extraordinary tact and courage on vexed issues in international politics. Professor Mills's famous retort to UK Prime Minister David Cameron on gay rights remains a global reference point and an inspiration to many contemporary African leaders to this day. Mr. Speaker, Professor Mills has received many posthumous awards since his passing, including that from the Fritz Red Lake Alumni Award and the one from the Fulbright Scholarship Program, having become the first Fulbright scholar to become the president of an African country. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, may I take this opportunity to respectfully invite honorable members to the 6th John Evans Atta Mills commemorative lecture, which will take place on Monday, 30th July 2018, at the main auditorium of the University of Cape Coast from 2:30 p.m. This year's special guest speaker is the illustrious Professor Kwesi Boche, who speaks on the topic, Ethicality, Democracy, and National Development, the Legacy of President Atta Mills. And at this point, Mr. Speaker, it is only fair and appropriate, as Professor Mills taught me to do, that I place on record for high commendation the generous financial support from President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and the state as extended towards the organization of this year's commemorative lecture. May the good Lord continue to grant the soul of our dearly beloved President Mills eternal rest, and may the comforting peace of the Almighty be with his family, especially his widow, Dr. Enisina Nadu Mills, his son Sam Kofi Mills, the National Democratic Congress, and the entire nation. I also pray that the good Lord will strengthen us this week, being the week that we undertake a state burial of our eminent former Vice President, His Excellency Kwesi Bekwin Emisata, and observe the former 1 week of the late Venerable J.H. Mensah. God bless our homeland, Ghana, and continue to endow us with such great men. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable